jump right in because, like I said, we do have a lot to cover. And so, as we are getting settled, if you will, please introduce yourself in the chat, your name, what town you're in, and what prompted you to join this class. And as you all are doing that, I will go ahead and introduce myself and then we'll jump right in. So I want to just welcome you to the first of many online trainings that I will be conducting over the next year as an introduction to Oregon State government. My name is LaNicia Duke, and I am your host for today. Before moving to Oregon in 2014, I had absolutely no experience in understanding state government. Since then, I've been able to grow not just in understanding of our local and county state governments, but I'm also excited to share my knowledge with other people so we can all be better informed in the process and be more proactive in our engagement instead of reactive, especially in the age that we are in right now with so much confusion on the difference between politics and government. And I believe that people perish for lack of knowledge. And that's why I'm happy to share this with everyone that is here today. And again, just welcome to everyone that is here. So today we are going to be doing an overview on navigating Oregon State legislative website and give a baseline understanding of the legislative branch. Our ultimate goal for this training is for each of you to build confidence in using and navigating state systems to be a more informed electorate and not just about voting, but how to hold our leaders accountable by following their process and also engaging in that process. Some of you may already know some of this information, but I hope that there will be something for each of you to add to your civic engagement toolbox. We are going to get started, so please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have a question or comment. If I'm getting ready to share my screen, if anyone is interested, I would invite you to share what experience, if any, that you have participating with state government, or if not, what you are looking to start doing as far as engaging with state government. And feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you would like. All right, no volunteers. So we'll just keep moving right along. And I just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen. Quick thumbs up if possible. Awesome. Thank you. So we are now on the home page of the Oregon State Legislature. The domain, I will put it in the chat just so you can, if I can, let's see. So you have it and maybe you can bookmark it yourself. And let's see, Kathy said you testified at state legislature twice this year about Move Oregon Forward transportation package. Very cool. And Kathleen, you live in Salem and you lived in Oregon for about 6 years and know little about government. I understand that. That's how I was before I got here. And welcome, Kathy, from the Rural Organizing Project. It's been a long time since I worked with ROP, and I used to do a lot of collaboration with Hannah when she was there a couple of years ago. So that's awesome. And you are active LWV, I'm going to assume is League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk County. Awesome. Tracking ballot measures for the 2026 season. Very cool. So we have a little mixture, which is wonderful, of experience from almost nothing to having experience in tracking and navigating measures and bills as they move through. So again, I just put the state website in the chat for you to follow along if you would like as well, but also just use this as a bookmark and save. And I'm going to use this time for this hour to just do a brief overview of where you can find specific information just from the home page. And so as you can see, and we'll get to these, but this is where most of the navigation will happen today in these tabs. But the first thing I want to do is just go ahead and give you an overview of what is sort of like the easy access points here. Here you can see they will have a banner of current events and things that they think that are important for us to just sort of see at a glance. And then you can also see the events at the Capitol. And I don't know if any of you have been able to watch, but if not, it's been very cool to watch our kids from across the state perform and sing Christmas carols. And last week it was so sweet. There were just babies, probably in between kindergarten and first grade, that just melted my heart. And so I would encourage you all, if you have not, I do believe they are doing this through the 23rd. They will have different school performances of our youth around the state singing. So it is a treat indeed. Even though there are several state websites, this is the one place to follow what is happening in the legislative branch of our government. As you know, we have three branches of government. We have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The executive branch is where the office of the governor and state agencies, state boards, and committees sit. And we can sort of think about the executive branch as the branch of government that governs and executes our laws. And so we'll get more into this later, but we'll talk about how once a law is put into place, then our state agencies create the rules to implement those laws. The judicial branch interprets laws through our court systems, and our legislative branch, which we are focused on today, is where our laws are created. There may be another website that you may be familiar with called OLIS, and that is the Oregon Legislative Information System. Even though it has its own website, as you can see here, you can still access it from the state legislature site. So you can see all of that is right here on the front page. We'll do an overview of OLIS before we end today, but like I said, today I really want to focus on just how to navigate and start being able to get comfortable with using this site. On the homepage, again, you can find the current today's schedule of events, if any, along with the time and location. You can filter with these check marks to see individual times for floor sessions, committees, and building activities. You can also find the quick links for the link that we're about to go over right now. We're going to do OLIS at the end, but I just want to show you these links real quick. The video link is where you can watch events at the Capitol. So not only will they have today's events, which will be the children singing, but they also we have a scheduled committee hearing today, a joint task force hearing. And so you can see that the scheduled events are also listed with links. And then when they get to archive, you can see the video as well as just listen to the audio. So for every meeting that is held, you can go to this page. If you know the name of it, or if you have a keyword you want to put in, you can put that in as a search. But also chronologically, this is where you can see where all of the hearings have been held. Next is the news link. This link is where you can find legislative news and press releases published by legislative members, caucus, and leadership of offices and legislative departments. And you can see all of 2025s are going to be listed in chronological order. And you can also see them on the side here. And those are released by senators. And then also, if you are interested, you can subscribe to receive these by email as well. The visiting tab is where you can plan a trip to the Capitol, explore family-friendly events and exhibits hosted by the Capitol, tour options, and educational resources. So this is a great way, even if you've never been to the Capitol, to be able to see the inside, the chambers, and get a great experience without having to leave the comfort of your home. And it also gives you some of the history on some of the artifacts that are in the Capitol as well. And then you can also see upcoming events. And it also has resources um, for students that want to learn more about government. And I think it is more imperative than ever that I remember having civics and government when I was in high school. And I know that we don't really teach that in our schools anymore, but I think it's more important than ever that we continue to reinforce the importance of understanding government, not so much politics because they are two different things, but to really understand the function and the roles of government. All right. Finally, I'm going to click on this legislative dates. And again, here is going to be where you can find the official deadlines and important dates for legislative events. My favorite part about this is you can come down here, scroll down to the calendar section, and here is probably the best view to be able to see what's happening. So the beginning of the year, you can see there are some things that will be taking place, and you can click on it. And it'll tell you that for legislative concepts, this is when the drafts need to be returned. And we'll get into some of that. Also, there's legislative committee days coming up at the beginning of the year. So this is when the committee hearings take place. So committee days are where the committees hold informational hearings on topics that could lead to legislation in upcoming sessions, hear updates or implementations of past legislation, or hear reports from state agencies. And when you go to February, you'll be able to see that our next legislative session begins on the 2nd of February in 2026. And this is where you'll be able to follow along with what happens during those days. You can see if there's any committee hearings that you do want to follow. I'll show you how you can even see what's happening on the floor in real time. And it's just really fascinating to be able to go through this process. Because we are going into an even year, 2026, we are going into a short session. That means that the short session will be 35 days. And it is really for changes or really quick fixes to things that have either already been implemented or things that need to be decided right away. Our long sessions happen in our odd years, which just happened this year in 2025. And those are 160 days. And that's where I will be able to show you the difference in how many bills are introduced for legislation in the short session versus the long session. And it is a considerable amount of difference in those two. I'll just take a pause right now and want to make sure no one has any questions for me. Awesome. I'm trying to move my screen. There we go. I missed by this one because this will get to a little bit later, but this is where it is an instruction on how you can find bills and vote information. So there is a cool YouTube video that does explain what we're going to be going through at the end, but it does walk you through how to find the bill that you're looking for. And most people that are not well versed in political jargon probably will not know what the bill number is that they're looking for, but you can still do a search by name and other ways. And so we'll go into that as well. And then you can also find out how to find vote information for a bill, and we'll go through that as well. All right. Just making sure I hit everything. Oh, and one more thing before we go, a couple more things I wanted to show you. Here, again, you can do a quick search for Oregon Revised Statutes, and that is probably known as ORS initials, and those are the bills. You can also search bills across session. Again, this is not the easiest way to find things, but it is a quick access point for you right there, as well as finding your district and legislators. So you can put your address in right here, and you would be able to go at one glance. You can see who your senator is, your state representative, then your congressperson. You can also see your senators. For Oregon are Senator Jeff Merkley and Senator Ron Wyden. So I am going to put this also in the chat just for a quick reference if you are interested. All right. Legislative branch is where a lot of public input happens. This is why it is so important for us to understand how to navigate this system. Some of the things that the legislative branch does is they create laws, they set public policy, they decide how the government will be funded, they review administrative rules drafted by state agencies, and they confirm executive appointments referred to them by the governor. Just curious, is anyone currently serving on any state boards or commissions or and have gone through that Senate confirmation process? No? Awesome. Well, that is also another way to be engaged. Is there are over 200 boards and commissions that you can apply to be a part of across the state. I was on the Racial Justice Council's Environmental Equity Committee, so I was appointed by Kate Brown to that, and then I was confirmed by the Senate as well to the Commission on Black Affairs a couple of years ago. And so it was an honor just to be able to sit in front of the Senate committee and introduce myself, introduce why I am excited to serve Oregon in that capacity and share some of my experience to what brought me to that space. And so I encourage you, if you are not involved in some form of state level, to take a look, because there are many, many ways to be involved and get your voice, let your voice be heard at those levels. So we have two chambers in our in Congress, in our state Congress. They were adopted in 1859, our current system, after becoming a state. We have the House of Representatives, which serve 2-year terms. There is 60 members in the House of Representatives, and they represent approximately 70,621 citizens. The Senate, they have 4-year terms. They serve around 141,242 citizens, and there are 30 members in the Senate. So we have 60 members in the House and half of that number, 30 in the Senate. And another thing to remember, 60 members, 2-year terms, 30 members, 4-year terms. So the Senate is a smaller body, but they serve longer, and the House is a larger body, but they serve shorter terms. Each chamber has their hierarchy of leadership and offices, and so they're both comparable as far as the duties in each. But in the Senate, you will see that we have there is the Senate leadership. You have the Senate president, who is voted in by the majority party. You have the president pro tem, who is the temporary presiding officer in the absence of the Senate president. The Senate president presides over daily sessions. They assign members, and appoints chair and vice chairpersons to committees. They refer measures to committees, and they oversee staff. On the House side, the same roles of leadership are the president of the House, the president pro tem again, and then you have your Democratic leaders in both chambers. You have your Republican leaders in both chambers, who lead their respective caucus offices and manage party affairs. There's also a sergeant at arms, and they are selected to maintain order. And I just want to go and show you all. In the House, one of the most important positions, if not the most important position, is not an elected position. The office of the chief clerk, and on the Senate side, it is the secretary of the Senate, provide the parliamentary assistance, maintain legislative records and measures, and also supervise personnel managing the legislative paper flow. So as you can see, the office of the chief clerk of the House is where you will find the rules of the House, the journals, and floor proceedings. So if you go to this journals and floor proceedings, you will be able to see a journal, which is pretty much a diary of what has happened on the House floor. I'm going to go back and try this again. I've been doing so good so far. There we go. Nope, wrong one. So as you can see, they're done. It looks like they're done every 2 years. So it should be 2023 session coming out soon. That'll be the more current one. But if you click on it, you can see again. It is the minutes of everything that happens when the House is in session and called to order. So you can see it will list all of the dates that it will include in this. And again, they go for the biennium. And I just want to show you, you'll be able to, so it also lists people by what committees they were in, the organizational journal, status reports of all of the House measures, all of the Senate measures. It is really fascinating because then you can just, it's another way to see what happens if you're not watching the video or the audio, to read some of the transcript of what happened. Also, where the rules of the House are, once they're adopted, this is where they are for everyone's reference. And then here on member resources, This is for members of the House, so anyone can read the rules of being in the House of Representatives. And this is almost like your HR employee handbook, if you will. There we go. And so again, you can see this is where they get their onboarding information, their office desk and parking assignments, technology resources, the organizational structure of the House. This is their process of getting legislation drafted, House floor process and protocol, information on the legislative agencies. And so again, anyone can see the same thing that they're learning, and we can learn it at the same time. I am also going to show you the Senate side. Again, they do the same role, but in the Senate, the pages will look different. They offer their information in a different way. The one thing I did want to point out to you here is I showed it to you on the home page, but let's just say you wanted to print this out for your reference. This is the calendar for deadlines for the 2026 session, and it will give you all the color coding and everything to further understand what those dates mean. And so I'm just going to blow this up so we can see this couple of things. I'll get into this in just a little bit, but you'll see you'll want to remember first chamber deadline, second chamber deadline. What that means, any bills that are voted out of committee, whatever chamber originated that bill, they have until February 16th to vote that out of that chamber. And then so if it originated in the House would have until February 16th to vote it out and refer it to the Senate. And the Senate would have until February 26th to vote to approve it. So again, short sessions, short deadlines. So there's not a lot of time for back and forth, which is why in the short session, legislators are only allowed to introduce 2 bills. Committees are allowed to introduce 3 bills, and the governor's office and the judiciary is allowed to introduce 3 bills in short session. If there were a need to extend the session, so for instance, again, short session next year will only be 35 days. If they needed to work beyond that time, they would have to do it in 5-day session extended day increments, and it would have to be approved by 2/3 of the vote of both the House and the Senate. So here you can also read about, you can see this seating chart. It'll give you a tour of the Senate chamber. You can read about the history. Again, they also have the rules, just like on the House side. And you can see the process that they go through. Legislative concept drafts. And so that's what you get into when you want to start working with a committee person or one of your local representatives on getting a bill introduced. I have some other classes that I'll go in depth and really help people learn not just how an idea comes into law, but how to engage in that process. And again, you can see they also have their journals. And so you are able to see, again, exactly what happened on the Senate floor. Again, very interesting information. It's a lot, it's tedious, and it's definitely overwhelming to digest in huge quantities, which I think is probably one of the default faults, if you will, of government, because it is very hard to keep track of what happens because it happens so quick and there are so many things happening simultaneously. Again, I just want to take a pause. I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. I want to welcome everyone who has joined us since we've been started, and wanted to pause so I can take a sip of water and ask if anyone has any questions up until this point. And feel free to just go ahead and unmute yourself or drop something in the chat.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi. How come they have a short session on alternate years? Like, don't they have enough business to keep them busy both years in a row?
You would think. And every state does things different, right? But also, and I don't have an answer for that, like a straight answer. But I will say it is also why our representatives don't get paid well, right? But they're also still asked to do work outside of that actual session time. And so part of it is the longer session is at the beginning of the biennium. I do know this now. It's coming to me. Longer session is the beginning of the biennium. So that is when the state budget goes through its process for 2 years. So there's more to consider, if you will, right? And I will show in some later series how you can go and sort of track like the special session. There was just one for the transportation bill, right? And you're able to go and see all of the agendas, the videos, the testimonies that was submitted, and sort of follow and track everything that happened just for that one measure. And so I think for me, that's probably now why they don't, again, because they probably do have enough stuff to cover to do 160 days, each year. But I do know it does take much more time to go through the budget process. And I'll pull up next in OLIS just so you can see the amount of bills that are put forth in the short session versus the long session. And I'll jot a note because there has to be like a real answer to that. Or a more a less abridged version, I should say. If anyone has any thoughts on that, feel free to chime in. No. All right. Oh, go ahead.
I think it could be just historic, like that it was a smaller state and they could do the work and it hasn't changed. But I don't know if that's true, but it just seems like things have, the state has really grown and there's so much more work to do that it seems like they should have a long session each year. I don't know if that's really the reason.
Mm-hmm. And also, I do believe that it's time for Oregon to revisit a lot of things, right? For instance, many people don't know that that our Oregon state tax code is directly tied to the federal tax code. And it's codified in the Constitution. So anytime the federal tax law changes, the Oregon tax law automatically changes to reflect the federal tax code, which is why we're not just because of the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, but we're also going to see budget adjustments because of the changes in that tax code. So, for instance, since the federal government has in this new bill said they're not going to tax a certain amount of taxes for service workers, that means that Oregon State can no longer tax for that same dollar amount of tips for service workers.
I just quickly Googled, and one thing I forgot, that before 2010, we only had session every other year. And they did add the short session for the reason that there was too much work to do, but they still haven't done, the whole shift that probably does need to, and it had to be voted on. I think it was, I'm not sure about this, but I think it might have been like a constitutional amendment or something to do
Well,
it.
and it would have to be, I'm sure. And thank you for that, because that was before I got to Oregon. So that's great. Now we all know. So thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go back to sharing my screen. Got a couple more things I want to get through. And thank you all again for joining this session. Let's see. So I did want to go quickly, a couple of things. Committees. This is where, come on. You can see the current legislative committees, and they are updated in real time. There are, I have the number written down somewhere. I want to say, oh, I have the number. Give me 1 second. I want to tell you exactly how many committees there are. Oh, so the Senate has 15 committees. The House has 16 committees. There are currently 13 joint committees and 2 task forces. And so you can just sort of click and see which all of them are. And some of them you will be able to see are very similar. Sometimes between the House and the Senate will have a variation of a name that includes 1 or 2 things in addition. And so the joint committees you have here, the Ways and Means, of course, these are the ones that determine how the government is funded. So that's where those start, in these Ways and Means subcommittees. And then you have the task force. This is the meeting that is happening today at 2 o'clock, if anyone is interested. The municipal solid waste in the Willamette Valley. Once you click on a committee, we're going to find this a couple of different ways. This is the first way. You can see who is in that committee. You can see who the chair is, vice chair, the members. You can also see who the staff of the legislative agencies that they're working with. So this would be the revenue office, right? So they are going to be looking at what the revenue impacts would be to what they're looking at. Once you click, and then if we were in session on assigned measures, you would be able to see which bills they are that they have in committee that they're referring to or meeting about to refer out of committee. You can also see when they have meetings scheduled at the bottom, and then also on the right side here, you can again see the schedule. And when you click there, you can see the agenda for what they're going to be talking about. You have the links to access for live stream or recording. Here, you just get a PDF of the agenda in official capacity. Meeting materials, you can see what was submitted and by whom. So everything our legislative body hears, we have access to. If this was a bill and there were proposed amendments before it was referred out of committee, you would see those here. And then again, after the meeting, you can see where the log is, recording log will be. Go back to that. So again, that's how you can find it, by the name of the committee, and by, you can also, here, see by senator and by representative. So I could say look up by, in Tillamook County, Cyrus Javati is the House representative. I could look up by his name. So, and then Suzanne Weber. So you can go and pull them up and see by name who's on what and what their role is. And if they're just a member of the committee, that's all you'll see. Otherwise, you'll see if they're the chair, co-chair, or the alternate. Um, legislative days are when the committee hearings happen again before session begins. They normally happen actually about every 8 weeks. They're normally for 4 days, and it is a great way to be able to go to Salem and sit in those rooms and watch in real time if you ever have an opportunity. It's just something about being in the energy of that room. And I did not know how accessible government was until I got to Salem. And I don't know if how it's like in other states, but we probably have one of the most accessible Capitol buildings in the country, where anyone can walk in. Of course, you have to go through security like everyone else, but there are no gatekeepers to get to the representatives' offices. There are no gatekeepers to go to the senators' offices. It is literally the people's house, and I'm so thankful that anyone has that access. I just want to go to the homepage real quick again and show you. So that was when you clicked on committees, it took us to OLIS. So just know, once you click on that, it does go to OLIS. And I don't want to do that right now real well. Once you get into here, that's where it transfers you. And you can tell because the menu changes. And I want to just give a really, really quick overview of how to understand OLIS, because it took me a long time to just understand. The first thing you want to do when you're looking up anything that's happening pertaining a bill, and here you can see, if they were in session, you would be able to see those, because I'm only looking at today. That's the first thing to remember, and it's in order. You always want to make sure on the calendar you are where you want to be. So you can look for today, or you can look at, we're going to go to the 2025 regular session. There, it will go to the very first day that session started, which was on January 13th. And then from there, you can be able to click and see everything that happens on that day. So because we were in long session, these were all of the bills introduced in the Senate, or all the measures, I should say. I can't even tell you how many it is, but it's a lot. And I almost think it's unfair to people that we have to try to figure out what they're doing with this, because it's a lot. And there's no easy way to break it down. And even with organizations that have policy folk, if at least this, I'll just say this is my experience with this. And Kathy, if you want to chime in, but Most of the time when an organization has a policy person, it is literally only following the policy that is relevant to whatever their organization mission is, right? So if it's like Oregon Food Bank, it'll be food insecurity, however that's into health, education, or whatever, but they will not track every single measure that's going through.
Yeah, I agree with that, LaNicia. My experience in different advocacy groups is people have their lane kind of, and
Mhm.
unless it's some really big thing, they don't put that much, they don't put much energy into tracking other stuff. It's more the things they're trying to mobilize people around.
Yeah. So it's really hard to find someone who is going to be very well versed in every single measure that gets introduced. And so, um, again, here are all the bills that were introduced. Eventually, it'll come up. Yep, there we go. On the House side for this last session that just ended in June. Again, that's a lot, a lot. So the process of what happens to get a measure um, to law. So once an idea has been developed, legislative concept has been created, they work with the Legislative Council, the Legislative Office of Policy and Research to make sure that they're, because most laws, or I should say, most bills are to either enact a new law or to revise or amend an existing law. And so I just want to show you first things first. The House first reading or the Senate first reading. So from here on out, it's the first reading in any chamber. That's where the bill will originate, the draft bill will originate. From the first reading, the presiding officer of the chamber decides if it's going to committee, and if so, which committee. Once it goes to committee, that is where that's where the work happens, right? So if there's any changes that the committee wants to make before getting it back to the floor to be voted on, that's where that works. And so if there are amendments made to the draft while it is still in committee, it has to be voted with the amendment changes to be referred out of committee back to the floor. When you hear the term "it died in committee," that means that whatever bill was being proposed never made it to get a vote on the floor. So that could be they did not even debate it in committee, or they debated it and took a vote and it did not pass that vote. But a lot of times, if the committee doesn't even take it up, if you will, that's when you hear it will be dead in committee. If it makes it out of the committee, it then goes for a second reading. And that is with any amendments. A lot of times, especially in short session, it can go to the first reading and bypass that second reading if there are no changes. And it has to be voted on, that they can suspend the rules. That's what that means. One of the things that it means. So they can suspend the rules and go from and to not have to do a second reading if there are no amendments. The third reading is where you read the bill and then the debate happens about the bill on the floor. So that's where you'll hear the debate about the transportation tax happening between Democrats and Republicans, different things like that, or people putting in their support, extra things like that. And so that is where you get the third reading, and from the debate, then it is taken to a vote. And so, two terms to remember. Let's see if this is one. Okay, so here's one where you can see this is an overview of the bill that was introduced. You can find the text as it was introduced. And then again, you can see the history. You can see the amendments that were introduced. Engrossed means that it was voted out of committee or passed out of committee. So it's going to a floor vote. So Engrossed means it passed itself out of committee. Enrolled means once it got to a vote of the entire chamber, that it was passed there as well to become law. You can see the amendments. You can see the testimony. If it was in person, you can see if they were in support or opposition of, if there were documents that were presented. All of that is listed here as well. We're going to run out of time. Again, remember, this calendar is where you want to start first if you're looking up specific bills. We're still in 2025 session, so one of the easiest ways to look at some things is under reports. Not reports, I'm sorry, measure information. So you can see new measures, measures from previous sessions, and then the governor signed bills. So for the 2025 regular session, these are all of the bills that the governor signed. Now, granted, she doesn't have to sign every bill, but these are the ones that she did sign. And once bills are enacted, they are normally put in place the 1st of January, the year following they were put into law. Again, here you can see work of the committees. This is where you would find, again, the bills now that we're in the 2025 session. So in February, this will be updated for 2026. It'll say 2026 regular session. And that's how you would start. And then from there, you can go to see, you can see who sponsors the bills. You can search by text of the bill text. You can see the agendas online. This is for today, but again, if we went to 2025 regular session and then go to committee agendas online. Oh, it changed on me again. I was not supposed to do that. Well, that's weird. Maybe that's just for the one for today then. Maybe that does not change. All right. So I am going to stop there. I am going to stop recording.